is Kelley Moody, and thank you for joining us for this special edition for Chapman News. When you think of an acrobat, an aerialist, or a tumbler, it's easy to imagine a poised and fit individual, probably with long and strong legs to match. But the last part of that description has been altered dramatically by Jennifer Bricker, who joins us today to share her unbelievable story of a life without legs and the event that turned her world upside down. Jennifer Bricker was born on October 1st, 1987, and given up for adoption because of her disability. Her adoptive parents cared for her with compassion and devotion as she grew to have few limits despite her inability to walk. Jennifer quickly found a love for sports, managing to play softball, basketball, and volleyball. Her father would bounce with her on their trampoline as a child and ignited a spark in Jennifer for power tumbling. Despite what would seem to be a setback, she competed for 4 years against able-bodied athletes and went on to become state champion as well as 3rd and 4th place all around in the Junior Olympics. All the while, Jen idolized one specific Olympic gold medalist, Dominique Moceanu. Jennifer later discovered that her role model was much more to her than just a distant hero. Dominique is her biological sister. After writing Dominique a letter, they met in person and have since been inseparable. Here with us today, Jennifer Bricker. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jen. Now, your story has been absolutely raved about by all audiences ever since they heard about you meeting Dominique. What was that like to find out that your idol had a blood relationship to you?
Mind-blowing. I mean, it's just something you can't even imagine. You think of these type of things as only things you see or hear about in the movies. This doesn't happen in real life. You know, when I find out my childhood idol is my biological sister, I mean, the only reaction can be, shock, disbelief, and then followed by excitement because your idol is your sister. So it's very exciting.
That's fantastic. How did you and Dominique initially meet?
Well, I had a long, series of failed attempts, and my third and final attempt was the successful one. And I wrote her a letter with all of the legal documents and everything, so she knew that I wasn't some crazy fan. And it was at the end of 2007, around Christmas time, and she sent me back a Christmas card that I'll never forget. I waited 2 long weeks, for that message, and essentially 4 years really to finally let them know that I existed, that they had another sister out there. I was here, and I wanted to meet them. And so our first meeting, our first contact was in December of 2007, but then we all actually finally met in May of 2008.
And you have another sister as well?
Yes, Christina. She's just barely 2 years younger than me.
And what is your relationship with both of them now?
We're sisters. I mean, it was one of those things where when we met, even though we were strangers and raised in totally opposite households, we had all these just uncanny, organic similarities down to our voice, our mannerisms, our interest in food, our interest in people, our activity, you name it. I mean, we even all three had a tattoo of a butterfly on our backs when we first met. And me and Christina's were in the exact same place in our body.
Really?
I mean, just the irony doesn't stop.
Is there a significance behind the butterfly?
For me, I just always liked butterflies. And I think it was all three of us, we just liked butterflies. And ironically enough, so did my biological mother.
Wow.
So it's something maybe genetic, I don't know.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me about your adopted parents.
My adopted parents, I think the biggest blessing of my life was day one. Was the fact that I was left in the hospital, given up for adoption, and adopted by the specific parents that I was adopted by, because they gave me the gift of having a different perspective on life, a different outlook, being able to have confidence and self-esteem, and this outlook on life that, you can do anything, and you just can. I feel like I can conquer anything. Nothing is too big, because I know that your mind is such a powerful thing, and that your mind can transcend anything physical. And they gave that to me, and that was a huge gift.
Since finding out about your biological family, you have learned that your father has passed. What is your relationship with your biological mother now?
My biological mother, excuse me, and our relationship is very different from my sisters and our relationship. It's of course always a different dynamic in general anyway. But then you have all the added element. She grew up in communism Romania. She had a little bit of a rough marriage and just kind of a little more of a difficult, challenging life than I've ever experienced in the first place. And I think there are a lot of emotions tied to that time in her life when I was born. I don't think she necessarily wanted to give me up for adoption, so you can imagine the loss and the pain that she feels that is maybe essentially tied with me and that time in her life. So I think that our relationship is just going to be that of more of a marathon than a sprint.
Yeah, you and your sisters definitely grew up with quite the stark contrast between you. But did you ever feel abandoned or unwanted or any of those feelings that sometimes adopted children have?
That's such an interesting question, and I find it fascinating because I never once had any feeling of that because I don't know, I had such an amazing childhood, and all of my memories of childhood are fun and happy and loving. So for me, I guess if you had that, maybe had I grown up in an environment that was not happy, that was abusive, that was just anything other than what I had, maybe I would have felt those feelings and wished for something different or wondered what my biological family would have been like. But because I had such love and supportive and encouragement, I never once wanted or longed for anything else or was upset because I was adopted. I was very happy and thankful because I knew that had I been born in Romania, I could have been in one of those orphanages just left to go crazy because I was different, because I had a disability. And that's how it was back then. And a little slightly even still today, I think it's, the orphanages are not a fun place to be for someone like me.
Right. Now, you were born without legs.
Yes.
But I'm curious to know, were there just no limbs present, or was there some sort of amputee process that might have been involved in that? Were there surgeries after you were born?
I was born pretty much I was born just like I am, but there was a little appendage that was basically like a foot that was there right when I was born, and they amputated that. Ooh, when I was really young, maybe a year old. It was I don't have no memories of it, but because they knew that eventually they assumed that I would want to be in prosthetics as I was older. So that being fitted for prosthetics would cause a problem. It would get in the way and whatnot, and just in life in general. So they definitely made the right call on that one because, ironically enough, me being born this way in exact proportion is actually what allows me to do everything that I do physically. It's very fascinating.
Why don't you wear prosthetics? Was that a decision you had to make at some point?
I had prosthetics all through growing up, and it was always so unnatural for me. It was just something that, and again, the irony is that, prosthetics are made to help people make their lives easier. But for me, it makes my life more difficult because all the things that I love doing, I'm such an outdoor, athletic, adventurous person that I can't do any of those things with prosthetics. And if I do them with prosthetics, it's 10 times harder. So for me, it was never me. It was just more difficult and unnatural. So I never gravitated toward them.
Wow, that's very interesting. Was there a key moment, you think, where you realized, oh, I'm different from my brothers, your adopted brothers, or I'm different from the kids at school? Was there a moment like that, and how did you cope with that?
That is very interesting because I always, of course, I knew I didn't have legs, and as a child, I mean, like, we're talking kindergarten here. I would explain to the kids, and my parents said it was so funny because here I am, this little tiny thing, and I'm explaining in such an adult way, that I was born so different and and all this stuff, but it didn't actually click until much later in life because I competed in volleyball, basketball, softball, power tumbling, and I was competing in with able-bodied athletes, not in a Paralympic sport or anything. And so, it drew a lot of attention, and people would come up to me, oh, you're such an inspiration. Oh my gosh, you're so amazing, and all this stuff. And it irritated me. I was so irritated by it. I didn't understand why are you making such a big deal about me when my friend is doing the same thing and you're not making a big deal about her? It didn't compute. The fact that I was having an impact on people, I had no idea until, I don't know, I was probably like 13 or 14, which sounds bizarre because it's very old, especially, I've always been a little more mature for my age. And so, but when you're not raised like that from your family, your coaches, or your teachers, that's what happens. That's, again, just reiterating how powerful your mind and your environment can be for the rest of your life.
There's obviously no disabled division for power tumbling. And so you were competing, as you said, against able-bodied athletes. Do you think that not having legs gave you an edge, or did it hurt you?
I think as an adult, now that I'm a performer, it definitely is an edge. It's the edge. It's what everyone's trying to do is stand out, in this industry. And I think when I was competing, it definitely made things more difficult because you have levels of difficulty. You have certain things, and I was competing on a rod floor, so it's not that springy when you don't have legs. So you
really don't have that knee power, do you?
Exactly. And then in making up for it, you're pounding your back. So there's all these things. It's not a trampoline, whereas trampoline is a lot more forgiving on your back, and you can go higher. So to do, say for example, a full twist, you need height to do that. To get height, you need to hit harder. So it's just this chain effect. So for me, competing on the rod floor, it definitely caused more challenges, just in that way of that I couldn't get my difficulty at a level to be high enough to keep getting higher in my placement, first place, second place, that type of thing. So it made it more challenging in that way. As an adult, as a performer, it's the edge. In the beginning, it was more difficult because being the first person like yourself to do what you do, people are scared of it. They don't know how people are going to react. I don't know, how's an audience going to, no one's ever seen this. This is new. I don't know, maybe I just don't want to touch it. But in the long run, and I knew this, I knew eventually once I got to that level of performing, which for me was the Britney tour, and people saw that they loved it and they reacted greatly, I knew that in the long run that would be my advantage.
People finally embraced it.
Absolutely.
Switching gears a little bit, with your circumstance, I can only imagine that there's a degree of discrimination that few people ever really encounter. What do you have any specific examples of that, of anything that you've ever encountered that was hurtful?
It's interesting because I grew up, pretty much my whole childhood, I never really faced discrimination. There was one big time in my childhood that was discrimination in a sorts that I've loved, theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of goes with my adrenaline rush nature. And so roller coasters, extreme rides, we all love that in my family. And when I was 12 years old, we went to a theme park that was kind of in the area where I lived. And I waited in line. I was excited all the time. I was so excited to go to this theme park. And I got shot down from riding any ride and even all the water slides.
Really?
And the thing is, there's a height restriction, but the height restriction is for children, right? And there's all these rules that really are I was the exception to the rules, but because people, they feared it, they just didn't know what to do with it, they didn't want to tackle it, so they just said all across the board, no way, no remorse, just nothing, just so clean, so cold cut. And so at 12 years old, I just had never experienced anything like that, and it was so hurtful, and I was so bummed. And my family, of course, they're not going to stay and ride the ride, so we all left. And what was really beautiful is that my teacher, the next day, she found out what had happened, and the next day, and we were in 5th grade, she kind of canceled all the afternoon of the itinerary and taught my whole class about discrimination.
Wow.
It was really such a beautiful thing. She's such a person that stands out in my life as my teacher, Mrs. Sweat. She just had that about her. I mean, how amazing that she taught the whole class of 5th graders about discrimination that day because of what had happened to me. So that's a time in my life that really stands out about discrimination.
Yeah. I'm sure you're used to getting a lot of stares. How was that as a child with children your own age? And you said you explained it to them, but was that difficult to make friends?
In school, no, it wasn't like that at all. I grew up in a very tiny town, so the people that I started kindergarten with, I graduated high school with. So for, people in school, it was nothing. They grew up with me. There was no stares. There was no making fun of. There was no teasing.
That's so great.
So I was very lucky in that. Again, all goes back to being meant to be, being adopted into the family I was into, being in the town, the school. It was all to serve a purpose, for me to fulfill my purpose in life. And I think that's why there's no hard feelings. I know I was meant to be born without legs, given the talent specifically to do specifically what I'm doing now. Speaking, performing as an acrobat, being an aerialist. All of these things, have such a greater purpose than just for me. Yes, I enjoy what I do, and I'm so blessed to be able to travel the world and do what I love and get paid to do what I love. But the bigger picture is really the impact and that it's having on other people, and the positive change, hopefully, that it's having on other people, just through the talents that were given to me.
I would certainly agree that you've had a positive change. I have very few doubts about that.
Thank you.
As you've gotten older, you have this edge. You have something that's different about you than something that you've shown appreciation towards. But has it been difficult with tasks like driving a car? That was one of the first questions I asked you when I met you. Mm-hmm. Was that a difficult thing?
Driving a car, I just always assumed I would drive. I grew up with that mentality, and yeah, sure enough, we did the research before I was going to get my permit, and this day and age in this country we live in, we're very fortunate to have things like that, where it's very normal and common to have an installment put into a vehicle. And so 15 years old, you start driving with your permit in Illinois, and my school, we did our driving classes in school. Mm-hmm. And so they did the pre-planning too, and so the year that I was going to be up in driver's ed, they had a car with the installments, and we had our car get, the equipment put into it, and then I got my license on my 16th birthday, just like everybody else. So I've been driving, since I was 15, and it's just like you learning to drive with pedals. It's just me learning to drive with the hand control. It's very simple, but every time someone sees it, everyone's reaction is the same. Oh, that's it? Oh, okay. It's so easy, it's just a handle. Here's a steering wheel. Here's the turn signal or windshield wiper, whatever is on that side, and handle, pull down for the gas, in for the brake. Pedals are still there. Goes in any car. Very simple.
You probably wouldn't have had that opportunity in an Eastern European country growing up, would you?
No, and with traveling so much, it makes me very appreciative to see how other countries are, where even if I want to go rent a car, boom, they can have a car like that, no problem.
That's really cool.
Yes.
That's very unique.
It's very unique, and it just makes me, proud to live in this country, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit more personal question.
Sure.
You're obviously getting older, looking towards the future. Are you looking to have a family? Can obviously want to get married maybe at some point. Can you have children?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm so all over the place and traveling, and I can't sit still right now. But eventually in my life, I would love to settle down in some sorts. I don't think I'll ever fully settle down. and have a family. And yes, I can have kids. Everything internally is the same. And, hopefully I just have a little belly and little cute belly going on. But yes, I definitely would love to have kids one day, and adopt as well. I think I would love to naturally have some kids, but
that was
also
my next question, yeah.
Yes, also adopt. Very big passion for me. I mean, it changed my entire life. So if I could do that for somebody else, I mean, that's just full circle.
Do you think you'd look into American or international adoption?
That's the question and the debate I have with myself a lot.
I don't. Same one.
Yeah. There's some in our country, but maybe the situation's worse in another country, and how cool would it be to adopt a kid from Romania? It's a back and forth battle that I think it's going to be. I'll cross the bridge when I get there. Yeah.
So changing gears again, why power tumbling? That was a very early decision for you.
I was drawn to Dominique. I was drawn to her since I was 6, 7 years old, and I just saw myself in her, ironically enough. And
makes sense.
It makes sense. But it's one of those things that's going to baffle me for the rest of my life. I mean, here I am, a child, and the only way I could relate to her was, oh, she's small, I'm small, we look alike, and we're both full of this fiery personality. And, that's the most you can really comprehend at that age. But I just was like, oh, I want to be a gymnast. I don't know why I was gravitated toward it. I mean, only thing I can say is it was in my genes. Both of our parents were gymnasts in Romania, and we all had that genetic, just that gene. And so for me, that's the only thing I can think of. I was naturally gravitated toward it ever since I can remember.
And since starting your career, you've done incredible things. Like you said earlier, you've been on tour with Britney Spears for the circus tour,
Yes.
and you've recently been in Dubai. Out of all of your experiences, what has been the most powerful one that sticks with you?
Man, I gotta say, performing on the Britney Spears tour as a featured act, center stage, sometimes 20,000 people live, all around you, screaming, chanting, cameras going off all around you. I mean, your heart is just, you're alive. Every time I would go up, and we did about 40 shows with her, every time we entered from a lift underneath the stage, so the stage is above you, you get on this lift, you're slowly risen up into this sea of people all around you, the music's going off, everyone's freaking out, and you just know you're alive. And every time I was like, I love my life, I love my job, this is amazing. And it just puts you at a certain level where there will never be anything more intimidating than that as far as performing.
You say intimidating. Did you get stage fright frequently?
I don't get stage fright, but I guarantee you that first show I had with 20,000 people, I was out of my mind nervous. And I don't get nervous like that. But after doing all of those shows at that high of an intense level and that high of like visibility, where you know at any moment you could get fired, you could go whatever, and everyone's watching you and you just can't mess up, especially me. Because I mean, I'm bouncing 20 feet in the air off of a trampoline that's already up. You know, it's...
There's some risk involved.
There's some risk, yes. And so all of that pressure is on you. But having had that experience at such an early time in my performing career, it just skyrocketed my confidence and my performing level to a place where, you know, it's very fortunate for me to have that happen at an early time in my career, because it just set the bar where, wow, I can do anything.
And obviously, you've used those attributes that you've inherited towards your public speaking career. Where did all that positive outlook come from such an early age, and then wanting to give that back to people?
Like I said, you know, it comes from, you know, I have my faith. My faith is everything. It's the foundation of who I am. It reiterates my whole purpose in life, me being born this way, and really trying to live my purpose and my path where, you know, like I said, it's not about me. It's really about I'm just being used to do good in the world, to try to do good for others. And, you know, my parents reiterated that as well. Such a strong family background, it really makes all the difference in the world. It's a direct line. Your childhood, my childhood, was a direct line to who I am as an adult. Absolutely. And I just feel so overwhelmingly blessed sometimes. It's a lot, because you think, wow, what did I do to deserve all of this? You know, this is amazing, and I'm very thankful for it. You know, I know that the quote, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected. That is definitely true, but at the end of the day, it's just such an overwhelming blessing.
It is so impressive and admirable, the amount of appreciation that you have for the life that you have been given, and that you have taken something that could have been seen as a setback, that could have been seen as a disability, something that could hold you back for the rest of your life, and you just took it and you ran with it in your own way. And I think that is so special, and we are all so thankful that we were able to have you here for our first ever Chapman News Special Edition.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I feel honored.
So thank you so much for joining us. You can, of course, look up all these details online. They will be on our Twitter, our Facebook, and our Instagram. So make sure you follow us there. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Kelley Moody, signing off for Chapman News.